ribbed part. This is the usual part that gets real dirty. Okay? And I keep a brush close by, and when this has had a chance to soak, I use the brush to go back and forth, get inside the ribs to clean it. I can do the sides with it real quickly, so that now the lid is clean. I then rinse it off with clean water. And you may want to, this may take a little while for you to clean, depending on how dirty they are. So this is just a little nice little add-on I do for each one that I repair. Then I set the lid, I let it set for a few minutes down on the floor. I put it down on the floor and let it set while I'm working on it to dry off. Okay? We'll set that down there and we'll come back to it in just a few minutes. Okay, now we're going to get to the guts of the NES control deck. We've already removed the 6 screws from the lid, put them in here. Now there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 screws to remove the RF shield. Sometimes there's an 8th screw in this lower right-hand corner, but most of them only have 7. So again, remove all 7. Placing them in the little dish. Okay, now once those 7 are finished, or removed, you can remove the top RF shield. All it is a piece of metal that's been bent around to fit down on top. And this shields any radio frequency interference that might be given off by the Nintendo that would interfere with your television. So what we'll do is we'll set that aside. Sometimes that's real dirty too, and that has lint or dirt or something on it. You can just brush it off, brush the lint off the top of that with a rag. And then I set that aside for later. Now what we've done is we've exposed the insides of the Nintendo. You'll notice that right here, this is the game loading cartridge. I want to make a point right here. The way that the Nintendo works, you have a 72-pin connector that's deep down inside the Nintendo. As you insert the game into it, and as you push the game down, the game goes into the connector, and then as it pushes down, it levers. There's a lever action there on the connectors. Okay? Now the door, as you know, sits right here, and that shields it from any dust getting in. But if the door is not there, you'll get dust in this part of the Nintendo, which is sometimes bad. However, the connector is recessed far enough that you don't get a lot of dust or dirt that floats down in there. Most of it is introduced by the contacts, via the contacts. The cartridge will sit out for a while, dust will settle on the contacts, and then it's inserted and the dust will transfer from the cartridge into the contacts. So that's why the little dust cover that Nintendo gives you is important to use, and to keep these in a clean spot. Now at this point, you can take, if you just suspect that the connector is dirty, you can take one of the cleaners that I've sent to you and insert it and just move it in and out, and back and forth, in a back and forth action. And what that does is that cleans the contacts. It will clean off any dirt that's on the contacts or remove any hair. Okay? Now one of the biggest problems that I mentioned earlier is the flashing screen. About 90%, 91% of all the Nintendos I've gotten in have the same singular problem. And that is that the 72-pin game connector that hooks onto the motherboard is usually dirty or worn out, in most cases worn out, and needs to be rebuilt or replaced. You can replace them. Again, the address of where you can buy these for replacement is included in the documentation. However, at the time of the making of this video, the price was around $20 to $25, depending on the volume that you buy. So what I've done is I've invented a technique to rebuild these. And the technique, you can take any cartridge, any 72-pin connector, any 72-pin connector, and rebuild it stronger and better than the original. So I will show you that technique in just a few minutes. To finish removing and disassembling it, there's 2 screws on either side of the RF modulator that must be removed. Again, what I keep on hand is a little picking tool, and it's easy now to reach in and pull those screws out. Again, these are the same size as all the other screws. We've removed 13 so far. That's the 14th, and now this is the 15th screw. And they all are the same size. I put them all in the small bin. Now these 2 front screws that hold in the loading cartridge are, again, the same size. So they'll go in the same bin. Remove those, put those in there. And the very back 2 screws, the very back ones, this one on the right and this one on the left, are also the same size. Now, the only other 2 screws that you'll have to worry about are those, the screw here and the screw over here, the middle ones. And those 2 screws are not the same length as these. So, I have another little bin here that I have appropriately labeled long, and what I do is when I pull those 2 out, sometimes they're the same color, but usually they're a silver color versus a copper color. I will put those in this other bin to keep them separate from the others. Now that that's been done, I can stack these and move them to the side. The entire insides will just lift right out. And again, you'll have to experiment with that to get used to lifting it in and out, to moving it around. Once you lift it out, this is the kind of tricky part. It's connected by three connectors. The leftmost game controller, this is the game controller, hooks to the front connector. And it hooks with the purple onto the left and the brown on the right. Okay, so the way you get those out is you just pull on it. I haven't found a better way to get those out other than just pulling on it. Now there's a sharp edge right here, so I kind of rock it back and forth as I pull, and that comes out. Now that's the on-off switch reset connector, and that ties in over here. Okay? And then the right game controller plugs in just right next to the game control, or to the on-off switch reset switch. And again, I rock it back and forth as I pull it. Now this is free to move around, and the bottom, you'll notice, is comprised of a couple things. There's a bottom here, and this plate comes off. And a lot of people ask me, why is that plate there? Well, it turns out Nintendo, the authorized center up in Washington, has a computer, and the computer, they pop this off and they break this little cover off and take it off. Their computer plugs directly into the motherboard, and they can troubleshoot a motherboard in just microseconds. Whether the RAM's bad, the CPU, any of the chips on there, they can tell it right away. Unfortunately, we're not that sophisticated, nor do we have that money to invest. Therefore, we won't worry about that. However, there is the assembly here for the reset power, which comes out also. Only remove these if the bottom is dirty and needs to be washed. Take these off. You take these off by taking these 2 screws off, these 2 screws out. This, I'll go ahead and do that for you. Take these small 2 screws out, and I usually just put them in the same bin with the long screw. Okay? Now this cover hinges from the bottom and pulls off the top because there's 2 little levers here that have to fit down. Okay, like that. So pull that off. Now, there's a left and a right one, and you'll notice that they're not the same length. If you hold them side by side and stretch them